Hi, everyone. It's great to have you all join us again for another Dream Destination webinar. We haven't had one for a while, so it's great to have Nigel joining us, and he's going to be talking about Mongolia today. So really looking forward to that. Nikki's also joining us as well. She's in Mauritius. She's going to just be in the background at the moment. She's offering some tech support out there. But yeah, Nigel, as most of you are familiar, is no stranger to our Dream Destination webinars. He's presented on several different countries over the past few years that we've been doing these. In fact, he just let me know in my ear, just a little whisper, that this is his sixth webinar that he's done of the Dream Destination series. So wonderful to have him speak so widely and freely about so many of the countries that he knows so well. And yes, as I mentioned earlier today, obviously joining in to take an amazing virtual adventure through Mongolia. I'm really looking forward to this one a lot. And yeah, it's going to be an exciting place to see. And as far as tour leaders go, there are few that can match Nigel's global experience. Over the past 3 decades, he's led more than 150 bird tours and visited over 80 countries on all 7 continents. Nigel's travels have also frequently involved getting to really off the beaten track type destinations. Beginning in the late 1970s, he traveled out to Kathmandu in search of exotic Asian birds, and it really hasn't stopped. He's just been going since then, and he's led pioneering expeditions to a wide variety of places, including countries like, or regions like Siberia, parts of Central Asia, Yemen, Bhutan, Indonesia, and Ethiopia. And then in 1992, he actually led the first ever tour to West Papua, which was formerly known as Irian Jaya. And then in 2012 as well, he took an intrepid birding group through northern Somalia. He's also escorted many cruises through Antarctica and the Arctic, as well as guiding many tours to particularly Asia and Africa. And well, with all this travel, he's got significant experience with well over half the world's birds. And yeah, really, we couldn't think of anyone better to take you on this virtual journey through Mongolia. In between all the travels, Nigel's also worked as a leading publisher of books, and he's latterly as the head of the Natural History of Bloomsbury Publishing in the UK. In the role, he published hundreds of books, primarily on birds, but also on a wide variety of natural history subjects. And notably, he was also the editor of more than 50 field guides, a long series of identification books, and the award-winning Mammals of Africa in 6 volumes. And Nigel's also the author of numerous articles, 3 books, including the acclaimed field guide, The Birds of the Horn of Africa, and the best-selling Where to Watch Birds in Britain. And he was also one of the founders of the Oriental Bird Club, served on the council of the British Ornithologists Union, the British Ornithologists Club, the Ornithological Society of the Middle East, and the African Bird Club as well. And he's been a member of the editorial board of British Birds magazine for nearly 2 decades. So yeah, it's a bit of a long introduction, but you know, Nigel has been around. He's done plenty in the world of ornithology. And yeah, as is always, questions are highly encouraged. So please feel free to send those through by the chat function at any stage. There's also a little Q&A box. You can use that too. And then at the end of the presentation, as usual, Nigel and I will run through some of your questions and answer a bunch of those. And yeah, again, this webinar is going to be recorded, so there will be a recording later on. You can always go back and have a look at that too. But yeah, on that note, it's time to sit back, relax, and enjoy the upcoming presentation. Nigel, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Keith. Can you hear me all right? Am I loud enough?
Yes. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, coming through loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on wherever you are living in the world. Welcome to this Rockjumper webinar. Thank you, Keith, for that very generous introduction. You could have made it a little bit shorter, actually. It was becoming almost embarrassing to hear you speaking about what things that I've done. I'm just older than everybody else. Anyway, today I am going to take you into the heart of Central Asia. The vast landmass that is Eurasia stretches from Western Europe across 11 time zones all the way to Russia and China in the east. In the middle of this continent lie the 5 stans. Let me actually move away from that gorgeous header picture. So here's a picture of Eurasia. So extending all the way from the United Kingdom all the way to Russia and China and Japan in the east across 11 time zones. So right in the middle of the continent, you've got the 5 stans. So that's Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. Afghanistan is not really considered to be one of them, but it's also a stan. And then to the east, Kazakhstan's the most northerly of the stans, and then to the east of Kazakhstan lies Mongolia. So Mongolia, as you can see there, is bordered by Russia and China. So when you think about Mongolia, I think most people probably think about these vast open steppes inhabited by nomadic tribespeople who live in yurts or gurs, as they call them. Are these typical tents, these circular tents, and they're called gurs in Mongolia, and they're called yurts in Russia. So we call them gurs when we go to Mongolia. So these people are very well known as being horse-centric. Their horses form a very significant part of the culture. Everybody has horses. They're great horsemen, great riders. You also think of the eagle hunters up in the northwest of Mongolia. These people train, as in falconry, they train golden eagles to hunt, and it's become quite a big a tourist attraction as well. People like to go and see the colourful eagle hunters in the west. And you also think of Genghis Khan, of course. Genghis Khan was the founder and ruler of Mongolia more than 800 years ago. And of course, the Mongolian Empire was much larger than the Mongolia is today. So those are probably the first images that you think about about Mongolia. The country was actually closed to the outside world from 1924 to 1992. And during this time, it was closely allied to the Soviet Union. The country was actually officially known as the Mongolian People's Republic in those days, and it operated under a Soviet-style communist government. After a peaceful democratic revolution in 1990, Mongolia gradually opened its doors, and today tourism is a big contributor to the country's GDP. Although the country only officially opened in the early 1990s, it should be mentioned that a few intrepid bird tours actually went to Mongolia in the early 1980s. This was in conjunction with pioneering visits to Siberia, when some pioneering tours went to Siberia, mainly the Lake Baikal area, and then slipped into Mongolia legally and officially, of course, and that. A few tours went there in the early 1980s, but essentially tourism really kicked off in the 1990s. This whole region began to open up really in the 80s and the 90s, and this enabled many European birdwatchers to finally get to the fabled breeding grounds of all those wonderful vagrant birds that reach Western Europe every autumn or from time to time. It should also be mentioned that Mongolia, the country, which was historically known as Outer Mongolia, shouldn't be confused with Inner Mongolia. Inner Mongolia is an autonomous region of northern China. It borders the southern borders of Mongolia, the country. And there are actually more Mongol people living in Inner Mongolia than there are in the whole of Mongolia, the country, which is interesting. 4 million in the Chinese province of Inner Mongolia. So Mongolia is still relatively little known on the birding circuit, but it's rapidly gaining in popularity, and in no small part due to the presence of snow leopards. Snow leopard actually, until fairly recently, was almost a mythical animal. It was famously hard to see. In the Himalayas, you have to go pretty high to see it. And then it was discovered not so long ago that Mongolia was actually one of the easier places to see it. You don't have to go to such high altitudes. You don't have to go in wading through snow or snowy conditions. You don't even have to walk great distances. You can see them by driving up into their habitat. So Mongolia has become a must visit place now, largely because of snow leopard. But it's got a lot more than just snow leopards. Many more things are on offer in terms of good scenery, good birds, and just a great travel experience. And that's what I'm going to try and demonstrate to you in the next 45 minutes or so. So here is a picture of the country, a map of the country. So Mongolia is well known for its vast steppes. But in the north, you've got forests and you've got mountains. And it's really the southern edge of the Siberian taiga up in the north. In the northwest, you've got these Great Lakes. I don't know if you can see the little pointer here. It shows up on my screen, but I don't know if it works uh, on this recording. And then in the west, you've got the Altai Mountains. These are rugged, bare mountains, not very well vegetated. And this is a favored habitat of the snow leopards. And then in the extreme south, of course, the Gobi Desert, the famous vast desert. And part of the Gobi Desert is actually closed off to tourists and to everybody. It's actually a protected area. And that's where the rare Bactrian camels live. So let's go through a few facts about Mongolia. It's the second largest landlocked country in the world after Kazakhstan. That's the largest. It's bordered only by Russia as a 3,500 kilometer border, and China with a 4,600 kilometer border to the south. As I said before, it's closed to outside visitors from 1924 to 1992. It extends 2,400 kilometers from east to west and 1,200 kilometers north to south. Area of 1.5 million square kilometers, pretty big country. Diverse landscape, mountains in the north and west, Gobi Desert in the south, grassy steppes throughout. Sparsely populated with only 3.5 million people in this really vast country. Half the population lives in the capital, which is Ulaanbaatar, which is 1,350 meters above sea level. So that's quite a significant proportion of the population. 30% of the population is nomadic or semi-nomadic. So that carries on to today. So these gers you see all over the place. The climate is distinctly continental, so it has very hot summers and long, cold winters, very cold winters, in fact. And Ulaanbaatar is considered to be the coldest capital in the world, with an average annual temperature of only 0.2 degrees centigrade. So that's a few facts and figures. I'm just going to run through what we do, the tours that we run to Mongolia. Basically, we do 2 itineraries to Mongolia. So the snow leopard trip, birds and snow leopards. This is a trip that's run in July, August. And it goes to a few sites around the capital, Ulaanbaatar, which you can see around this area here. And then up in the northwest, it visits some lakes and mountains up in the northwest, the Altai Mountains in particular, but also the Margaz Mountains has been recently included in our itinerary as well. So this is a sort of 2-area tour that we do in July, August. And this tour, apart from seeing snow leopards, you also get a good heap of great birds to see as well. Altai Snowcock, which is a near endemic. Pallas' Sandgrouse, which is quite a Central Asian species. Both white-naped and demoiselle cranes, bar-headed and swan geese. These are all good birds for world listers. The Mongolian Ground Jay and the Mongolian Lark, both of them near endemic. The Mongolian short-toed lark is a near endemic breeder. Guldenstadt's redstart, very high altitude and spectacular redstart. Mongolian finch, also a difficult bird to see really anywhere, although it's got a much wider range than just Mongolia. A bunch of waders on the July-August trips. Good time for seeing waders. Waders are passing through. Many waders breed to the further north in Siberia, on the tundra or in the taiga zone. And then they winter down in South Asia or even all the way down to Australia. And they pass through Mongolia. So that's a great time to see them, including things like little curlew, Asian dowitcher, sharp-tailed sandpiper. Really good birds, special birds to see. And then on the mammal front, some great bovids, Siberian ibex, goitered and Mongolian gazelles, argali, which is a kind of wild sheep, and the very curious saiga with a bulbous nose, which is used to occur in huge flocks, especially the Russian form. The Mongolian form has always been rarer, but both forms are considered threatened at the moment. And the world's only remaining wild horses occur here in Mongolia. With a bit of luck, you might get grey wolf as well. So trip expectation really for that trip would be 160 species of birds and 20 mammals. It's a good mammal trip, lots of little ones as well. And then there's the spring trip. This is done in May or June time, called Birding the Gobi and Beyond, with an extension to Cook Nur. Cook Nur is number 3 on the map in blue. Number 3 in the map in blue. That's the most northwesterly point. So this is a trip that goes to several sites again around Ulaanbaatar, and then a variety of sites right bang in the middle of Mongolia and going down south towards the Gobi area, into the Gobi area. So sites number 7, 8, and 9 in red are in the Gobi region. So that's the spring tour. And on the spring tour, you see pretty much most of the birds that you could see on the snow leopard trip, but not snow leopard. And the additions which you might see on the spring tour would be black-billed capercaillie. It wouldn't be impossible to see it on the snow leopard trip. We go to an area where they occur, but it's just at that time of year they're not very easy to see in July, August. Dorian partridge, again, you could see that on the snow leopard trip, but I haven't seen it in the trips that I've done there. But it is possible, but would definitely get it on the spring trip. Oriental plover, similarly, really, that's a near endemic breeder. And Kozlov's center, both of those technically could be possible on the snow leopard trip, but much more likely on the spring trip. Same with the pair David's snowfinch as well, which is also a near endemic. And then right down the south, the Saxall sparrow, you'll only get that on the spring trip, although that does have a wider distribution. It extends further west into most of the stans into Central Asia, to Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan. And then the Cook Nur extension, that's a good place to go look for relic gull, although I have seen relic gull in the Altai area as well in the west. But again, a much bigger chance of seeing that on the spring tour. And then up in the north, the northwest, white-throated bushchat. That's a tough bird to see. It's a bird that is pretty much an endemic breeder to Mongolia. Winters down in the foothills of the Himalayas in India and Nepal, where it's extremely hard to find. And then Eversman's redstart and Altai center, also a couple of good species that you can see. So all the tours start in Ulaanbaatar. Ulaanbaatar is actually one of the is probably one of the least attractive capital cities in the world. It is over 1 million people there. It's got 3 active power stations, which pump out a lot of pollution into the air, and many tower blocks and blocks of flats. Many buildings dating from the Soviet era as well. So it's not a particularly attractive city. The Tul River runs right through right on the southern edge of the city mainly, and this river is bordered. So this is just a picture of the outskirts of Ulaanbaatar. Sorry, and this is a hotel that we stay in on the southern edge of Ulaanbaatar, and this is the Tul River. So the Tul River is bordered by lovely deciduous trees. Many of them are willows. And some good little areas of wetlands. So this provides really good birding, the river edge, even the edges in the city itself, but particularly just outside Ulaanbaatar. So this is where we start birding. We do the initial birding around our hotel on the southern side of Ulaanbaatar, close to the Tul River. Here we can see some great birds. Well, this is a tree sparrow. This is a pretty widespread common species, but it's such a nice photo taken by someone on one of my tours. So I put it in just to get you into the field. It's one of the few birds that you will see every single day of the trip. It's an extremely common bird. This is just an adult with a juvenile. Lesser spotted woodpecker, quite reliable around Ulaanbaatar, unlike in Britain, where it's become an extremely scarce species indeed. And then azure-winged magpie. This is a great bird to see, and you can see it in the trees along the Tul River and a few other places too. The delightful azure tit. This is a gorgeous little bird. Everybody likes to see that. It's a frosty coloured tit, a sort of eastern equivalent of the of the European blue tit, really, but a really lovely bird and really quite easy to see, really, along the Tool River and in a few other places too. The long-tailed rosefinch, also a fairly widespread species throughout Siberia. This is also this likes the scrubby areas along the Tool River. And the white-crowned penduline tit. It's very closely related to the European penduline tit, but this one has much more white on the head, and this also likes the riverine bushes. Beautiful little bird with its black mask. Demoiselle cranes. Demoiselle cranes. Cranes is Mongolia is good for cranes. Demoiselle is quite common throughout Mongolia. It loves the wetter areas of the country, and we run into these frequently, usually in pairs or in very small groups. It's a breeding species. The demoiselle cranes breed quite widely in Central Asia, and half of the population migrates southwest into Africa and winters around Sudan and in parts of Ethiopia. And the other part of the population heads southeast and goes and winters in northwestern India. Amur falcon. Amur falcon breeds quite widely throughout Mongolia. You can see it anywhere in the steppe areas. Excuse me. And the males are spectacular. They're sort of all grey, really, with these red thighs, but these lovely white under wing coverts. The females are a different colour, and the males look very similar when perched to the red-footed falcon, which occurs further west. It's their equivalent species, really. So redfoot's in the west and Amur's in the east, but the females differ. So Amur falcon has a most incredible migration. So they breed all the way in eastern Siberia, right up into northeastern China and the Russian Far East, and they all winter in Africa. They fly across or they fly down into the Indian subcontinent. They gather in northeastern India, then they fly across non-stop across the Indian Ocean, and they hit Africa around Somalia and then filter down all the way down to Mozambique and even South Africa. So what an amazing migration the Amur falcon has. But here we see them quite commonly on their breeding grounds. So when you leave Ulaanbaatar, one of the first places most trips will go to is Terelj National Park, which is a little bit to the northeast of the city. And on the way you pass the Genghis Khan or Chinggis Khan Memorial. It's massive. You can see the people on the steps in the photograph there. And you can climb up onto this in this memorial. You can actually see on the top of the horse's head there are people just standing there along the edge on the horse's head. So it's a massive memorial. Most tourists stop there. It's a big tourist attraction, and Genghis Khan is very much revered in Mongolia. Also, can see a few birds around there as well. Dorian redstarts are usually hanging around in the car park. So Gorky Terelj National Park, which is just to the northeast, this is a great place to go. It's the southern edge of the taiga forest that occurs in southern Siberia. Most of the trees are larches or pines, particularly larches, though. These vast forests, this is the classic habitat for black-billed capercaillie. But as I said earlier, the capercaillies are not easy to see in July, August time. But if you go in May, June, and get up early in the morning, then there's a very good chance of seeing them. So this is typical capercaillie habitat. They like these flatter areas of the larch forest where it's a little bit open as well, and then they can strut around and lek in these areas. So that's a sign that capercaillies have been there. The droppings of capercaillie. So they produce these very cylindrical, finely packed droppings, very distinctive. So always a telltale sign of capercaillie's presence. So other good birds in this area, in the forested areas. You don't see very many forested areas in Mongolia. In most of the regions, most of the places that we visit will be open steppe areas or wetland areas or mountain areas. So in this forest, you look for things like red-throated thrush. This is a beautiful thrush, and it occurs quite widely to the further north as well, and it's a migrant, of course, but breeds here in the Gorky Terrell, which is a lovely photograph by Dushan of red-throated thrush in Mongolia. Pine bunting, also a fairly widespread species in Asia. It kind of replaces the yellowhammer that occurs in Europe. The two species quite often interbreed and you get hybrids around, but they are considered and always have been considered two different species. But hybridization, there is a narrow range hybridization zone between them. So pine bunting, this is a male, spectacular buntings. Dorian redstart, also quite a widespread species. Doria, of course, is a region in this of Central Asia. That's what it's named after. This is a juvenile bird. This was actually taken at that Genghis Khan memorial. It's a juvenile Dorian redstart, a juvenile male Dorian redstart, and that's what an adult male will look like. Siberian ruby throat. This is a very popular bird. Everybody wants to see a Siberian ruby throat. It's quite a shy, skulking species, but it's in the springtime. The song will give it away. It likes bushy areas. It's forest edge. It doesn't go into the deep forest itself, but it likes these bushy areas. So anywhere that's a little bit more open and got some nice dense bushes, that's a good place to look for a Siberian ruby throat. This is one of the famed migrants. It just breeds up here in Mongolia and winters down in South Asia and down into Southeast Asia too. And occasionally they turn up in Western Europe where they're highly sought after. A number of warblers occur in the region, and the most popular one of all is the Pallas's leaf warbler, a gorgeous little bird, one of the tiniest of the Phylloscopus warblers, but it's got lots of features. It's got an eye stripe and it's got a crown stripe. It's got two wing bars. It's got a pale yellow rump as well. Gorgeous little bird, also a migrant, breeds up in Central Asia, including Mongolia, wintering down in Southeast Asia. Black woodpecker, another, got a very wide range. This occurs all the way across from Western Europe all the way to China and to Eastern Russia as well. One of the largest European or Eurasian woodpeckers, black woodpecker. This is a male with the black crown, with the red crown. This is a very special bird. It's the Kozlov's accentor, also known as Mongolian accentor. This is a near endemic. It's a very tough bird to see. You have a better chance of seeing this on the spring tour rather than the Snow Leopard trip, but it can be seen on the Snow Leopard trip. But it's easier to see down in the Gobi region in the southern parts of Mongolia. It's not a particularly striking looking accentor. It's a fairly plain brownish bird, but it's got its range is almost just Mongolia and just a little bit outside. So a very special bird indeed. So moving away from the forested areas, going down southeast now of Ulaanbaatar. This is a place called Gungalut. So this is a camp, a lodge that we stay at. We stay there. There are gurs here as well, and even the main dining area there is built and shaped like a gur. So this is an area of mountains, of wetland, of steppe, and river. It's a great area, some great big open areas. It's protected, and you see some really lovely birds there. So white-naped crane is one of the key special birds there. A number of pairs breed in the area, and this is an adult with a chick, a sort of quite a smallish chick that was taken in July. So white-naped crane, very good bird to see in Mongolia. It also breeds in China, and then most of the population winters in southern China or in Japan. The demoiselle cranes, which I already showed a picture of, beautiful birds, commonly seen on the trip in pairs or small groups. They are one of the smaller cranes in the world, but a really beautiful species. And you can see these with chicks as well. So these marshes are some quite extensive marshes. White-winged tern, or used to be known as white-winged black tern. This is particularly striking in breeding plumage, and that's what you see when you see them there. They're really mainly just black and white. This is obviously from the underside. They're probably more striking from the upper side. They lose a lot of that black plumage, of course, in the non-breeding plumage, but here they're in their finery and they breed in the marshes, often in hundreds. Waders or shorebirds. I mentioned that these are um, quite good to see in Mongolia in the autumn on the July-August trips when they're passing through. But even on the spring trips, even on the May-June trips, there'll be shorebirds passing through, heading northwards. But in July-August, the ones will be heading south. But some do breed in Mongolia. Some are resident there. This is a Kentish plover. This breeds in Mongolia. It's a fairly common species. It's a widespread species, of course, Kentish plover. This is a much scarcer bird, Asian dowitcher. Pretty scarce throughout its range. It breeds in Mongolia, but it's not common at all. And it also breeds in southern parts of Russia, winters down in Southeast Asia. Our Thailand tours quite often see them, but when you see them in winter, they're just grey and white. But in Mongolia, you can see them like this with their lovely brick red heads and necks in their breeding plumage. So the key feature of an Asian dowitcher is that long, straight, black bill. That's the key feature there. Pied avocet, that's a widespread species, of course, all the way across Eurasia. And it's not actually a particularly common bird in Mongolia, but we usually pick up a few as well there, and it does breed in Mongolia. These are actually migrants. This is Pacific golden plovers. They mostly breed further north than Mongolia, but they gather together in flocks in the non-breeding season and migrating through. So this was taken in late July. This was part of a flock of several hundred Pacific golden plovers. Some of them are still have got quite a bit of breeding plumage as well on them. Pteric sandpiper is another species that is really a migrant, breeds mostly further north, but they're passing through Mongolia and they sort of stop off. Many of these waders do their southern migration or northern migration in hops. They'll stop off at good places to feed up on the way. There are some species that make much longer hops and are much less often seen on their migration route. The redneck phalarope, this is another migrant species breeding further north on the tundra areas of Eurasia, quite commonly, and then they winter at sea. These ones will be on their way down to winter in the Indian Ocean or even the Pacific. They're circumpolar around the northern polar regions, and then they winter in the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean. Often see these in small flocks. So this was a few taken at Gungalut. And then this is a very special bird. This is little curlew. Little curlew is a bird that breeds further north than Mongolia. It doesn't breed in Mongolia, but it breeds further north and it winters in Australia. And this is a bird that does actually make very long migration hops. So it's not a bird that is seen very often en route on its migration. You won't see them in India or Southeast Asia. You can see them if you go to Australia in the non-breeding season, but otherwise they're very hard to see on their breeding grounds. But in Mongolia, they do pass through in July, August, and this was part of a small flock of 20 odd that we saw a couple of years ago. And there's three of them there, three together. A very small curlew, the smallest of the curlews, the family, smaller than Eskimo curlew or the slenderbill curlew, both of which are now extinct. But the little curlew still carries on. I'm not sure what its population is, but it's still a really good bird to see. And that's a lovely photo of a single bird that we saw in 2023. So that's little curlew. one of the highlights if you go on an autumn trip. The wildfowl, swan goose. It's a Eastern Asian species. Not easy to see really. It winters in China, and occasionally you might see it in Japan, or one straggle to Japan. But most of the population winters in China and breeds in central parts of Asia, including Mongolia, where most tours will see a few of these. And there it is in flight. Got a very distinctive head profile, a very long sloping forehead, rather different from most of the other grey geese, as we call them, the Anser genus of geese. So a very distinctive profile. And the other good goose species that you get in Mongolia is bar-headed goose, here seen with some little goslings. So these breed in Mongolia and also on the Tibetan plateau, and they migrate south to winter in most of them in northern India, really, the northern Indian subcontinent. But the very spectacular looking goose, bar-headed goose. Whooper swans, it's the only swan species you find in Mongolia. It's not uncommon, just these small numbers in various wetlands as you drive around. But it's a widespread species across Eurasia. Again, also a migrant moving south in winter, but breeding birds in Mongolia. Sticking with wildfowl, ruddy shelducks, fairly regular, fairly easy to see on any sizable, decent part of a bit of wetland in Mongolia. Also, again, quite a widespread species in Eurasia. But other duck species are much more difficult to see. So falcated duck would be a good thing to see in Mongolia, perfectly possible to see. But if you go in July, August, they've already begun their molt, and the males will likely to be in eclipsed plumage. But if you see one in spring, you could see them looking like this. This is a photograph I took of a couple in Japan in winter. But falcated duck is a distinct possibility on our Mongolian tours as well. Other ducks, all the sort of regular northern Eurasian species of ducks are possible. Things like widgeon and shoveler, mallard, teal, and so on can be seen on the tour. But I'm not showing photographs of those because they're much more familiar species. But falcated is one to look out for. Baikal teal is also a possibility as well. But again, if you go later, it might well be in eclipse plumage. Mongolia is a great country for raptors, and we'll come on to some of those a bit more later. But probably the most, apart from black kite, which you see everywhere, the second most frequent raptor is upland buzzard. It's a big buzzard. It's much bigger than the European or common buzzard, and it's a very large buzzard, upland buzzard, frequently seen, often with a very pale head like this. And of course, very feathered legs as well, shaggy trousers. A beautiful raptor. Larks are always fun. I'm a great fan of larks. The big speciality in Mongolia is Mongolian lark. It's one of a genus of 5 species that includes the wonderful black lark. That's not in Mongolia. But the Mongolian lark is really spectacular, very colourful, lovely black collar on its throat, and easy to see. It's quite a common species in the country. And there's one in flight. Beautiful bird. This is also almost an endemic, really, or near endemic breeder. It's the Mongolian short-toed lark. Not quite as attractive. In fact, it's really a fairly ordinary looking lark. It's just brown mainly. Takes a little bit of finding and sorting out because you don't always get good views of these things, but it occurs pretty much throughout Mongolia and pretty much not outside Mongolia as well. But it's a migrant, and unlike the Mongolian lark, which is a resident species or largely resident, this one actually is a migrant, and most of the population, or all of the population, winters in the Indian subcontinent. Bligh's pipit That's also quite a common species here, quite similar to the Richard's pipit, which is a little bit bigger, um, which only really occurs as a migrant really through Mongolia. But Bligh's pipit is the common large breeding pipit of Mongolia. This is one that's been collecting food to feed its young. And then moving back to buntings again, Pallas's reed bunting. This is a special bird. Pallas's reed bunting is a sort of eastern equivalent of the common reed bunting that is quite a familiar bird to anyone in Western Europe. This is a female, again feeding young, a nest in some bushes. It likes these dense bushes in sort of more open areas. And there's a male with its black head and white moustache. This is Pallas's reed bunting. It's much paler than the common reed bunting, with these dark streaking and stripes really on the upper parts. This used to be called just a regular house martin, but it's now been the house martins of as were are now divided into three different species. So this is now Siberian house martin. The old house martin that we see in Western Europe is now called Western house martin, and that does actually also occur in Mongolia as well, and they do strongly overlap. So you actually do need to look at them. But the Siberian house martin, the key feature really is that it's got a lot more white on the rump. The white goes right up to the lower back, and this photograph actually shows that very well. So much bigger white rump on a Siberian house martin. This is just a barn swallow, very widespread species, familiar to everybody, I'm sure. But the race here is quite a nice rufous colour. That's unusual for us in Eurasia because most of the barn swallows have buffy or white even underparts. But this subspecies, Tytleri, has quite strongly rufous underparts, a bit like the North American birds. So on the mammal front, again, it's a good area. These steppe areas are good for mammals. The Corsac fox, it's a different species of fox. You do get red foxes as well, but this is a Corsac fox, a beautiful little fox that you can see. Sometimes you can see during the day like this, but perhaps sometimes easier to see at night as well. And then small mammals, quite a few different kinds of small mammals. There are several species of pika. This is the Dorian pika. These are small, sort of rabbit-like things, quite small, with little rounded ears. Little scurry into holes if they get disturbed. So you need to be quick to see one of these. The larger animals, this is the argali. This is a sheep, a wild sheep, and the males have spectacular horns. This is a little mixed group of young males and females. There's not a fully mature male there. They tend to go around on their own, and then the young ones and the females go around in little small herds like this. Unfortunately, they're heavily hunted. The males, especially, of course, for their horns. The males' heads are prize trophies, unfortunately, and so hunters do go to Mongolia to hunt these animals, and consequently, they can be pretty shy. So moving to another area to the southeast of Ulaanbaatar, this is a view at Hustai National Park, to the west of Ulaanbaatar, slightly southwest. This national park is famous for its mammals in particular, and in particular for wild horses, but some great birds as well. It's a good place to see red-footed Amur falcons. This is a male. Almost said red-footed there. They are extremely similar when you see them in this pose here. And the big difference in the males is the white underwing coverts. And this is a female, and this actually looked quite different from the female red-footed. So it's much grayer and a lot extensive white on the underparts as well. Lesser kestrels also quite a common species, likes open country, likes the steppe areas. This is a male lesser kestrel, also a migrant. And then the big falcon, of course, is Saker falcon. This is a bird that is suffering over much of its range. It occurs from Eastern Europe all the way across much of Eurasia, but it's heavily sought after by Arab hunters for falconry, being one of the largest falcons in the world, and it's declining in much of its range. It's still tolerably common in Mongolia, and it's something that we always see. But a beautiful bird, Saker falcon. It's one of the largest falcons. Another view of a Saker. Black kite, I said, was one of the commonest raptors. You see this every day of a trip to Mongolia, in small to medium large numbers, and the slightly different from more Western forms. It has a stronger uh, mark behind the eye, sort of like a little mask, really. And this is an upland buzzard again. Upland buzzard, very common bird. See that throughout Mongolia, in open areas. And vultures, good for vultures. Cinereous vulture is a bird that we see quite frequently in Mongolia, and sometimes see them on the ground like this, but more likely to see them flying overhead. But cinereous vulture used to be known as black vulture, but called cinereous these days to distinguish it from the New World version of black vulture, which is of course completely different. Dorian jackdaw. This is an eastern version of the European jackdaw, Western jackdaw. The jackdaws in Europe are all black, but the ones in Mongolia and eastern parts of Asia are black and white like this. You occasionally do get darker ones as well. They also have a dark eye, whereas the Western ones have a pale eye. So it's a nice Dorian jackdaw again. These go around in quite big flocks usually. Not so much in the way of reptiles and amphibians, but the Siberian toad is quite a smart-looking toad with very striking pattern. It's very variable, and you get many slightly different looking individuals, but many of them do look like this, which is a very striking toad indeed. Siberian, also known as Mongolian toad. Red-billed chough, another widespread species that occurs across Eurasia, also an isolated population of red-billed choughs in Ethiopia, which I'm sure some of you will have seen. But red-billed chough is a familiar bird that we see in Mongolia. Of course, you're usually alerted to it by its distinctive calls, chow calls. Another bunting, meadow bunting. It's a beautiful bunting. It's a bird of open country, bushes in open country. It's not a forest species at all. Beautiful meadow bunting. Very striking bird. It's a male. The females, as with most of the buntings, the females are much duller and mainly just brown and streaky. Dorian partridge, again, like many things, this is like an eastern equivalent of the grey partridge. So it looks quite similar to a grey partridge, and replaces it as you get further east. This could be seen anywhere in Mongolia, but not always easy to find. Mongolian gazelle, quite a rare animal, quite an uncommon animal, but it likes going around in these herds. So when you do see them, you can sometimes see them in quite not large numbers, even several hundred at a time sometimes. But this is part of quite a large flock that we saw in Hustai a couple of years ago. There's one running away, a more typical view. They're quite shy generally, so not always easy to get close to them. But Mongolian gazelle has quite a limited range. One of two good gazelle species in Mongolia. But the real reason that most of the tourists go to Hustai National Park is to see these. These are the wild horses. This animal was extinct in the wild, But fortunately, a few remained in zoos and in collections, and they were bred in captivity, and then they've been released into two or three parks in Mongolia where they're thriving, where they're doing quite well. And Hustai is the most accessible one of those, being closest to Ulaanbaatar. So moving to the west now. So we've just done all of the area around um, Ulaanbaatar and the central parts of Mongolia. So in the Altai Mountains in the west, this is the area where we spend a lot of our time. And this is the views are spectacular. The scale of the landscape is vast. If you look in the middle of the picture there, below the sunlight, you'll see a little row of white dots. That's our Ger camp. That's where we stay. That is our base. So that's at 2,000 meters above sea level. And then we drive up into the mountains from there up to 3,000 meters, and that's where we look for snow leopards. So this is a view of the Ger camp. Nice little row of neat Gers. And these are our hosts, the people who look after us. This is all one family or extended family. There's cousins and things as well. But this is the man in blue is the man in charge who knows how to find snow leopards. This is inside one of the little Gers. So they're quite comfortable. Two beds in them. They have a little sink, so you can wash and brush your teeth and so on. But the toilet and shower facilities are outside. But they're quite nice inside, and always beautifully decorated. They're not permanent structures. They move them, and even the ones that we use, they put up for us, and they stay there for the summer months, and then they're taken down in winter. We often get taken to go and see a traditional Ger, just like to see how the people used to live. And this man here is collecting cowpats with a stick and then putting them on his back, and they use these for fuel for their fires. And that's inside one of these traditional Gers as well, showing a few of their bits and pieces that they have inside, including a very ancient-looking gun. Bactrian camel, I mentioned briefly earlier on. The wild ones are extremely hard to get to in far southwestern part of Mongolia. But you do see flocks of these domesticated camels roaming the plains quite widely. They don't seem to be being looked after by anybody, but they're not actually wild animals. So that's our team who look after us. We have to often have field lunches, even field breakfast sometimes. Not usually a field dinner, fortunately. So on these plains in the Altai, in the plains around the mountains, we look for this. This is Saiga. It's a beautiful bovid. It used to occur in really big numbers, but the population has dwindled a lot. I believe it's stable or maybe even increasing a little bit now, but the numbers are much lower than they used to be. It's got a curious bulbous face, but they're very shy, very hard to get close to. So this is Mongolian Saiga. There are two races, one in Russia and one in Mongolia. And that's a young one. A few other bits and pieces. The toad-headed agama, quite frequent. You see these quite striking little reptiles, really, that you see in the stony desert areas in the Altai and the lower parts of the Altai. Toad-headed agama and bush crickets. This is a bush cricket, some big juicy thing that make a nice meal for a number of birds. These are not just regular town pigeons; these are hill pigeons. They look very similar to normal rock doves or town pigeons, but these have a different tail pattern. So they have this very striking white band on the tail. So that makes that a hill pigeon. So it's quite a widespread species, But you can see this in Central Asia and all the way into the Himalayas as well, higher parts of the Himalayas as well. There are lot of lakes throughout Mongolia. There are lakes, always worth looking at. Here we're looking at a little lake where we found some Asian dowitchers and quite a good selection of waterfowl generally. But it gets very hot in the day, so it's always good to have a bit of an awning to rest up. So white-headed duck was also one of the ducks on the lake there. This is a species that occurs from Western Europe through to Central Asia. This is a white wagtail or pied wagtail type, but this is known as masked wagtail. It's a different subspecies. It's a Central Asian speciality, this subspecies. So its scientific name is personata. So it's Motacilla alba personata. So also known as masked wagtail. And the Western yellow wagtail, there are a number of different races of those that pass through, including the white-headed form also occurs in Mongolia. This one, it's not really possible to tell, really. It's not a full male in breeding plumage, but it is a Western yellow wagtail. Bearded reedling, also known as bearded tit. This is a female, but these occur here. It's, of course, a monotypic family, so sought after by family listers these days. So it's the only species in its family. Viga gull or Mongolian gull. It's a good bird, but to see, but it's not terribly exciting. It's one of the many large white-headed gulls, which these days are considered species or subspecies, depending on your taxonomy. Viga gull, I think, is currently a species by most lists, but it has been part of lesser black-backed gull in the past as well. Much more interesting is this Pallas's gull, or used to be known as great black-headed gull, a Central Asian speciality. It migrates south in the non-breeding season when it loses the black hood, and you can see this in the Middle East and around East Africa, and in various places in southern Asia as well. But it's best seen in Mongolia when it's in its full breeding plumage, a really spectacular looking gull, and a very large gull too, one of the largest gulls in the world. And the real speciality is this. This is the relict gull. Long thought to have been a hybrid or a hybrid population, but it's a good species, and it's pretty much it's a near endemic in Mongolia. Most of the population breeds in Mongolia, and then they all shift off east to China. They winter off the coasts of China in winter. But it's a tough bird to see, and Mongolia is the place to go to look for it, and best seen in the breeding plumage like this. Isabelline shrike, one of 3 shrike species that you could see in Mongolia. This is the Isabelline, quite a well-known shrike, quite widespread, with a reddish tail. Isabelline wheatear is also a common bird. It's a very widespread bird. It's bigger than the northern wheatear, stands very upright. Unlike most of the wheatears, there's no sexual dimorphism, so females and males look exactly the same. Asian desert warbler. This is a nice bird to look for in scrubby areas in the Altai area. It's quite skulky, but it's got a lovely reddish tail and this pale yellow eye as well. It's a Sylvia warbler, and really quite a special bird. Again, it migrates like many of the birds do. It's cold in Mongolia in winter, so it's quite normal for birds to move out of Mongolia in winter. So this one goes down to the Middle East, in particular in the non-breeding season. Pallas's sandgrouse, always a popular bird to see. Sandgrouse, a smallish family of birds, birds of deserts. They're famous for, of course, for carrying water in their breast feathers from water holes to take to their young in the nest. This is a male Pallas. Pallas is most of the sandgrouse are in a single genus, Terrocles, but these Pallas and Tibetan are in their own genus, Seraptes, and the difference is that these have feathered legs because they live in colder places, colder climates, so they need to keep their legs warm. So this is Pallas's sandgrouse, special bird, and one of the top targets to see in Mongolia. Not many other places that you can see them. They used to be commoner and they used to be eruptive. So back in the 19th century, something big large populations or food shortages forced the population to move, and you'd get these eruptions westwards, and they used to arrive in Western Europe, even in Britain, in big numbers, and they even bred. One or two pairs even bred in Britain. They stayed over the winter and then bred. But that doesn't happen anymore. The population has retracted or and become and declined as well. So they don't erupt any longer. But this is Pallas's sandgrouse, and Mongolia is a great place to go to look for it. Beautiful bird, got a long pointed tail streamer, and a dark belly as well in flight. And then, of course, a top target for anybody going to Mongolia is the Mongolian Ground Jay. Member of the crow family, one of four ground jay species. So the Mongolian one is a Mongolian near endemic. It likes sort of rocky, open areas, steppe areas, but sort of it likes it rocky and a little bit undulating as well, rather than flat areas, and a few bushes as well, just to perch on or get shade underneath. So Mongolian Ground Jay, one of our top targets, beautiful one in flight there from Dushan, and a fabulous picture from Dan on one perched. This is a petroglyph. This is a drawing. I think it's meant to be an argali, and it was done by thousands of years ago. Some peoples who were living there drew this representation of an argali. You can just see the legs there, I think, and the body, and the curly bit is for its horns. And this was just lying out in the desert. It ought to be in a museum, really, but it was just a great piece of rock lying out in the desert that we found. But yeah, it's thousands of years old. This is a Tolai hare, the one of only two species of hare in the country, and the most frequent one is this one. It's the Tolai hare. Quite easy to see in the Altai Mountains. Hares all look pretty similar, really, and but fortunately, it's really the only one there, so it's easier to identify. So moving up from our camp, we drive up into the mountains. This is where we spend a lot of time looking for birds and mammals up in the mountains. Spectacular, rugged mountains. We go up. These are Bactrian camels there. Lovely wildflower meadows on the way up. Gorgeous wildflowers, very colourful, very lush. Some pinks on the left there and gentian on the right. These are the camels, little groups of camels. Presumably somebody owns them. Chakar partridge. Chakars are a species that occurs all the way from Turkey all the way to the Himalayas, right through Central Asia. There's a number of species in the genus. The chakar is the most widespread of the group, and it likes these rocky mountains. There's another photo of one as well. This is another Philoscopus warbler. So sulphur-bellied warbler. It's a bird that likes breeding at high altitudes. It likes rocky areas with sparse bushes, but often find this above the tree line. It's got this sort of oleaginous color below, and this lovely yellow supercilium. And it winters further south. You can see it wintering in the northern parts of the Indian subcontinent, and it's often on walls or buildings and rocky areas. That's what it likes. and often close to the ground as well. So sulphur-bellied warbler. Black redstart, another species of redstart. Um, this is not a. This is probably a juvenile, actually. Females look similar as well. The males look different. The males are black and rufous, more spectacular looking. But this is probably the commonest redstart that you see in Mongolia. Brown accentor. Brown accentor is another species of accentor. Kozlov's, of course, or Mongolian is the endemic one. Brown is a more widespread species that occurs in Central Asia and in the Himalayas, but at quite high altitude, in rocky areas, with his lovely supercilium. That's an adult, and that's a juvenile of the brown accentor. And that's the Kozlov's accentor or Mongolian accentor. Not easy to see in the Altai, and I think this one wasn't even taken in the Altai, but I showed it there, included it here because it can be seen there. But this bird is more easy to see in the Gobi in the south. On the mammal front, tarbagan marmots. Marmots are very common. See them regularly in the Altai. They're diurnal, so they're easy to see. They can be a bit shy. They'll dive down a burrow if they think there's any danger around. And of course, they're a popular food item for snow leopards and probably Pallas's cats as well. Another prey item for smaller cats would be this. This is a pallid ground squirrel, one of two species of ground squirrel. You get the pallid and you get the long-tailed in this area. They're small, sort of suslik type things. And again, they'll dive down holes very quickly if there's any danger around. It's another shot of pallid ground squirrel. Another piker, different piker. This is the Pallas's piker. We had Dorian before, but this is Pallas's piker. Big ears, big round ears, and quite dumpy body. Quite a small animal, so guinea pig sized, really. Raptors. I said raptors are good, and in the Altai, it's especially good. It's always worth looking up. So cinereous vulture is one of the more frequent species. It's very dark below, blackish underwing coverts, pale on the face as well, but very distinctive profile with very broad wings. Himalayan vulture with these pale underwing coverts. That's another fairly common species in the Altai Mountains. Himalayan vulture. That's a gyps vulture related to the griffon vultures. And then there's bearded vulture, which used to be known as lammergeier, of course, with the diamond-shaped tail and the very long, relatively slender wings. Lammergeier, of course, famously, lammergeiers like eating bones and bone marrow, and they will often get a bone and drop it from a great height in order for it to break, so they can eat it in more manageable sizes. And that's a juvenile of the bearded vulture. Looks a bit different, same sort of shape, although the wings are broader in the juvenile. They're not quite so long and slender, but it still has the diamond-shaped tail. Booted eagle, a few of those. That's a more widespread species. This comes in two morphs, of course. You get a pale morph and a dark morph. This one is the pale, obviously. So that's a booted eagle. A little less common, but still seen quite frequently. And then steppe eagle. This is a big eagle, same sort of size as like the African tawny eagle, which it used to be considered to be conspecific with. This bird is showing quite signs of molt. It's not quite adult yet. But these birds, these steppe eagles, they take 4 or 5 years to mature, and they kind of molt continuously. They're always molting some different feathers. So the young birds show this pale line across the center of the underwing, as this one shows. It's a little bit broken up, and then they get progressively darker as they become adult. So these are quite common, widespread species in the Central Asia and the steppes area, and then they migrate down to Africa in the winter, where they get mixed up mixed up with tawny eagles and even lesser spotted as well. So this is a steppe eagle. And you get golden eagles as well. Golden eagles are resident, similar, same genus as the steppe eagle, but golden eagles are around. They like any big wild areas, forested or not, in Mongolia. And it's golden eagles which are typically used by these eagle hunters in the northwest. When I say eagle hunters, they don't hunt eagles; they use eagles to hunt other things. So look, moving on to small birds, snowfinch, white-winged snowfinch is the other species of There's two species of snowfinch. This is the one that's more widespread. So this one occurs all the way from Europe across Central Asia. Comes in various different races, but this is a white-winged snowfinch. And then twite is a small finch. Again, got a widespread range, breeds generally in higher altitudes, in mountainous areas. Again, all the way from Britain right across to Central Asia. And the rock sparrow, with its sort of slightly more strong head pattern, got a central crown stripe. It's got white spots on the tail. Can't really see that on this photograph, but otherwise quite sparrow-like, but a different genus, not a true sparrow. And again, a bird with quite a wide range across Eurasia. The Eurasian crag martin, it's an all-brown martin, and also has tail spots, but it has quite a good range as well. And then if you're lucky, you might see a wall creeper. Wall creepers are they occur in Mongolia. They're not easy to see. They breed at very high altitude. They come much lower in winter, often easier to see in winter. And the females and males in winter look like this with whitish throats, but the breeding males have black throats. But wall creeper is a possibility in Mongolia, but not guaranteed. The horned lark, another very widespread species, both North America and in Eurasia. Many, many different races of horned lark. The one you get in Mongolia is called Branti, and it's been proposed that horned lark could be split into 3 or as many as 6 species. That might happen. It hasn't happened yet. And if that does happen, this will probably be a monotypic species on its own. So that's a possible split. So always worth seeing when that's the case. So that's, at the moment, we call that horned lark. And then Mongolian finch. This is a strange little finch, pretty little finch, not dissimilar from the trumpet finch, which a few of you might know from other areas, more widespread. This bird is curious. Sometimes it has been found breeding in Turkey and in Armenia, but it's unpredictable in those sort of regions, really. Its core range is Central Asia, and it's in the mountains. Not always easy to find, but in Mongolia it is fairly common. And if you're lucky and you find a little stream like this, then there's a chance of actually getting close to one and getting a decent view of one. Redstarts. Now the prize redstart is the world's largest redstart, which is Guldenstedt's redstart, or if you're an eBird, they call it rather boringly white-winged redstart. But Guldenstedt's redstart is the largest redstart. It's a spectacular one. This is a female, and she's carrying food, and this is a male, much with huge white wing patches and a lovely white cap as well. So, and that's a juvenile, and July, August time, juveniles are often around. So that's a juvenile male. The juvenile females look much like the female, and then that's a full adult male. So a really lovely redstart, Guldenstedt's redstart. Up at the high altitudes, up at 3,000 meters, it's very open and very rocky. We spend quite a lot of time up there. These are yaks. There are herders there. They're herders with their goats and sheep, and they've got yaks as well. So these are not actually wild. But snow leopards don't care. They'll eat a yak if they can get one, and even a goat. Although the ibex or marmots will be their preferred normal prey. So this is just a couple of yaks. Our team, lots of hanging around. Then we spend lots of time looking or pretending to look when you're up in these areas, big vast landscapes. So this is the view from where that last photograph was taken, and you're looking across to those far slopes. And if you look really closely, you might see that. So that's an Altai snowcock. Altai snowcocks occur in these mountains, but they're actually hard to get close to. So I haven't got any photographs of Altai snowcocks. So that's a picture from the field guide. But you do see them, and we see them in quite big flocks sometimes, 20 or even 30 at a time. So that's what it looks like a bit closer up. But that's a species I wasn't able to get a photograph of. These are the Siberian ibex. And you see small groups of these. These snow leopards like feeding on these. And they're quite shy, quite hard to see well. This is the best we managed for a photo on trips that I've been on. And these are our scouts. So we've got these scouts, a team of 4 scouts on horseback like that, or one of them's got a motorbike actually. And they go around looking. They spend all day looking for snow leopards, and they've got scopes and binoculars between them as well. As you can see, there's a tripod there and a scope on the other one. And they spend all day looking for snow leopards, and when they find one, they call us, and then we go and try to look for them. That's how it works, and it's pretty successful. We don't have to hang around all day. Sometimes we can go to other places and look for other birds, because once a snow leopard's been found, it's quite likely that it will hang around in that area for a little while and give us time to get to look for it. So, snow leopard. Often they're quite distant. That's not surprising. You get great scope views, but not always easy to photograph. So this was one that we saw last year, one of 3. It was a group of 3 together. It was considered to be a female with 2 near adult cubs that were still with her, probably not for very much longer. And the 3 were sort of pretty much hanging around together. And we had some pretty great views. This is one of them. But as I said, they were harder to photograph. But you can get lucky. And in the year before when we were there, this was the spot that we went to. And that little row of rocks you could see on the mid-distance hillside. If you look at that row of rocks, this is looking a bit closer on that row of rocks. And then down in the middle of the picture, there is a big hole there. And that is the snow leopard's den. This is where a snow leopard had 3 cubs. She raised 3 cubs. So that's a slightly closer view of the den. And you can actually see the cubs, the snow leopard and her cubs there in the left-hand side of the den. And these were the pictures that we took on that trip. So those are the 3 cubs. We spent 8 hours with these cubs, and they were playing outside the den, and they were going into the den and having a little sleep, and then they would come back out again and play a bit more. And after 8 hours, the mother turned up. She had been out and left them on their own for all of that time. So those are the 3 cubs. And then the mother turned up, and the 3 cubs were pleased to see her, and she nursed them, and they played with her. And we had a fantastic couple of hours with this female snow leopard and her 3 cubs. We reckon they were about 6 weeks old. So that's probably the main reason people go to Mongolia. But there is this one as well, Pallas's cat. We've not been lucky yet to see this on the trips, but we've got a new. Quite likely that future trips will be able to get Pallas's cat as well as snow leopard. and that will be a very special experience indeed. It's a much smaller species, of course, but it's got this very curious flat sort of head shape, um, and of course very thick fur. So that was mostly the birds and snow leopards trip. If you went on a spring trip, there are a few additional species that you could see. I mentioned and showed the habitat and droppings of the black-billed capercaillie. So this is a black-billed capercaillie. This was taken on a spring tour to Mongolia this year by Dushan, a male, of course. A fabulous, fabulous bird. It's not just in Mongolia. It's got quite a wide range in Russia and China as well. But Mongolia is definitely the easiest place to look for it, I think. Another species, again, which is probably more likely on the spring trips, is the oriental plover. It's a near endemic breeding bird to Mongolia. The entire population moves south and winters in Australia, northern Australia. But it's not an easy bird to see elsewhere. It takes long hops on its migration, so you don't see it much on route between its migration breeding grounds to its wintering grounds. And in Mongolia, I think it might leave quite early because we haven't picked it up yet on our July, August trips, although we don't probably go to the best areas for it. But this is a bird that May, June tours will certainly run into. Pear David snowfinch again. This is again more likely on the main tour, the comprehensive tour in the Gobi region in the south of Ulaanbaatar. It's almost endemic. It's a near endemic to Mongolia. Beautiful little snowfinch, often in flocks as well. So that's a resident species. And then right down in the south in the Gobi is the Saxel sparrow. Saxel sparrow is a Central Asian species. It's in southern parts of Mongolia. That one you definitely won't see on a snow leopard tour. It's only in the south of Mongolia. So this Saxel sparrow. And then also, if you go up on the extension of the spring tour, a few extra species you might see would be this. Like this is the Altai accentor and relic gull. Pretty good chance of seeing relic gull in that in the northwest there. Eversman's redstart also there up in the northwest. This is a redstart with a rufous back. And then the big prize up in there is this one is the white-throated bushchat. Used to be called Hodgson's bushchat. It's almost endemic to Mongolia as a breeding bird, but it winters down on the plains of northern India and Nepal, right at the foothills of the Himalayas. But it's very hard to find there. That used to be regular at Kosi Barrage in eastern Nepal, but the habitat got destroyed and it's not been seen there since. There must be other areas to see it, but it's not often seen and it's difficult to find. But in Mongolia is where it breeds, and in northwest Mongolia there is a good chance to see it on the extension, the Kuknur extension up in the mountains there. So that's a key target bird of the spring. So that's it really. Just wrapping up, I'm often asked, it probably will be asked, what books to take. So I preempt that and show you what is available. So the Helm Guide, The Birds of Mongolia, is the best one in my opinion. Probably available through Princeton as well. There's this other one on the right there. I don't think that's as good personally, but it's a perfectly adequate guide, and either would work well for you. There are other books you can buy in Mongolia. The book on the left is a Mammals of Mongolia, and it's in bilingual in Mongolian and in English, but it's only available, as far as I'm aware, in Mongolia. But you can buy it in the airport and in one or two places in Mongolia, but hard to find outside the country. Similarly, there's a field guide that is made of photographs, the one in the middle there, written by Mongolia's top ornithologist, who's actually the author of the Helm field guide as well, actually. But this one, instead of using illustrated plates, it uses photographs that have been cut out, and it's perfectly good, but probably only available in the country. And then there's a little guide to the amphibians and reptiles which you can get in the country as well. So this is a lovely painting. Couldn't resist putting this one in. This is a painting in the airport when we were leaving. I just thought it's a just a fabulous painting, and that's where you put your cocktails. So yeah, and I'll finish with that. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully there are some questions, and I'm very happy to answer them. And that's a quick or not so quick tour around Mongolia.
That was a real treat, Nigel. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we've all got a very good idea of what Mongolia is all about, some of the habitats, some of the key national parks, and some of the most, spectacular wildlife and birds as well. And the photographs were just stunning as well. So thank you so much for putting that together and sharing your knowledge with us. It was a real treat. And you couldn't have ended with a better slide. That's just adorable. Amazing.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, just a handful of questions at the moment that have come through, but Alan was just mentioning this is fantastic, by the way, Nigel. But what's the food like? Could you give us a little bit of an idea of the of food overall?
Yes. I was reading somewhere the other day. I was reading an article the other day and about Mongolia or no, actually it wasn't. It was about Tajikistan, but it applies to Mongolia too. You don't go there for the food. And I think that's fair. The food's it's perfectly adequate, perfectly acceptable, but they do like a lot of fatty meat and so on. And it's quite a meat based. There's not so many vegetables. It's not great. It's not like going to Thailand or India. But then few places are. But it's I mean, as tourists, it's perfectly adequate. It's it's simple in when you're staying in the Gers in the Altai because that extended family who are looking after you. I mean, they're doing all the cooking there, and there's limited supplies and so on. But it's okay. But it's not one of the great cuisines of the world.
Thanks for that, Nigel. It's a very honest answer. As I say, nothing to get out of bed for and be super excited, but as you say, perfectly adequate
It
and does the job.
wouldn't stop me going there anyway.
Right.
And I like my food.
Absolutely. But as I say, you're not going there for the food. Yeah,
No.
100%. Um, yeah, some lovely comments coming through here. Yeah, Marsha just says, and yet another wonderful presentation, Nigel. Thanks so much. Lisa as well says, thank you for such an informative and interesting presentation, which it certainly was. So thanks so much for that. Um, Ricky was just asking here, is it also a fabulous presentation, but how strenuous are the two trips? So I guess from a walking perspective and just generally getting around.
Not at all. Um,
Okay.
if you went on the spring trip, there are two more strenuous bits. The Snow Leopard trip is not strenuous. Um, you're going into the mountains, but you drive into the mountains. They're four-wheel drives, so they're not driving on tarmac roads into these mountains. They're rough tracks, and sometimes they leave the tracks and just drive over slopes, grassy slopes. So it can be quite bumpy, but you're driving, so you're not having to walk. The first time I went, we had to actually walk 200 meters to look for the snow leopard. On the second one, it was only 100 meters. So you don't. So there's no hard walking for snow leopards. You drive almost to the areas.
Hmm.
And then elsewhere, it's just like anywhere else, really. You're driving, you're getting out birding. There's no big hikes. Um, the exception is on the spring trip. You might have to do a bit of walking for the Capercaillie in those forests to look for the Capercaillie, and that could be longish, not particularly strenuous, but it could be longish. And then for the white-throated bush chat on the extension, that does involve a bigger hike into the
Yep.
mountains. I haven't done that myself. I've only seen that chat in Nepal, so I don't need to go. I gather it's a much tougher walk for the bush chat.
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well. Absolutely. Um, Great. Marshall was just asking here, do you have any idea what the highest, I know you haven't been, but what is the highest elevation of the extension? Do you
It's
know
not
offhand?
higher than the main tour,
Right.
3,000 meters. The mount. I always make a note. I measure the altitude. I've got my, on my with my phone and so on. Um, I think 3,100 meters was the highest we got to in the Altai, and you don't get any higher on the main tour either.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, yeah, quite a few people asking just about the elevation and what it
Yeah.
might be like. But as you say,
Uh,
it's not particularly high. It's not like we're getting
no,
to
three
4,000 or
thousand
anything like that.
meters.
Trees.
3,000 meters is 10,000 feet. And
Yeah,
it's always considered to be the cutoff point for altitude sickness. You very, very rarely would anyone get altitude sickness below 10,000 feet.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's one of the beauties of looking for snow leopard in Mongolia, as you mentioned right at the
Yeah.
start of your presentation, Nigel. It just is you accessing snow leopard habitat at a low altitude, which just makes it that much more accessible.
Yep.
Um, just Mike and Rose were just asking as well. Saiga, I mean, you mentioned that the population, I know that they went through a bit of a crash, and yeah, that they are recovering to some degree. But in Mongolia, are they hunted or are they legally protected? Do you know offhand?
Good question. I think they're legally protected, but I don't know whether any are hunted. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't actually know. What I do know is that um, the Mongolian population was always much smaller and more fragmented than the Russian population, and the Mongolian ones is a different subspecies, which is why we sometimes call it Mongolian saiga. So I'm not sure of the fortunes of the Mongolian form. The Russian one was the one that used to be occur in hundreds of thousands, huge flocks of tens of thousands, and that was the one that had the big crash. And I don't think it was because of hunting. I think it was probably more loss of habitat. They when they dug up all the steppes and so on.
Hmm.
Um, the Russian one had the catastrophic decline, but that's building up again now. But the Mongolian one has always been much less common. But I'm not sure about the hunting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think hunters
So,
come in from outside to do it, like the
yeah.
Argali. We did see European people hunters who'd come in to hunt Argali when we were there,
Hmm.
and that happens. But I don't think they come and do Saiga because they haven't got big horns or anything.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't imagine that Saiga
No.
would be a heavily hunted species.
Mm.
Um, so Alan was just wondering as well, how many scopes are there generally within the group, and would you recommend bringing your own scope?
Yes, I think I would certainly for snow leopard. Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely worth bringing your own scope for the snow because we you have some 5 or so days up in the hills there, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of open country as well, a lot of lakes and so on. So if you're up to it, I would say definitely bring your own scope. It's a country that really you can use the scope a lot.
Hmm.
And when you're looking for snow leopards or those snowcocks or whatever, if you're used to using a scope and you have your own, I would say bring it.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah.
and and on the photography side, people often ask about that, and I didn't mention that, but it is quite hard to photograph birds sometimes in Mongolia. The birds can be a little bit shy, and they can often be a long way away simply because of the big open spaces.
But it's
Um, you wouldn't perhaps realize that because of the photographs I've got. I've gleaned photographs from a variety of sources and got the best of everybody's photos.
hmm.
But it's not always easy. And I did have somebody on the trip once who was a little disappointed that his didn't get more photographs because they were often the animals or birds were often a long way away.
Hmm. Yeah, as you say, big wide open spaces.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think on the
really big.
scope front as well,
But
you're not carrying your scope around for 5, 10 kilometers of hiking. You can
no,
just pack it in the vehicle, you're driving to the
yeah.
points, you get out, you can set it up and look and scan. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
if you're used to
that's
using a scope and you have one and you like using a scope, I would say definitely bring one. Yeah.
mm, mm, absolutely. Philippa was just wondering as well, how many locations does the Snow Leopard tour stay in? And how many of those would be in Gers?
Most of the tour is in Gers. Um, and the Gers vary from the sort of slightly simpler ones, like the ones in the Altai for the snow leopards, but places like Hustai National Park where the Gers are more permanent and they've got more permanent buildings.
Hmm.
So it's slightly more luxurious, I suppose. But a lot of the trip is in Gers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Um,
that answers that
that,
adequately. Yeah, thanks, Nigel.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Michael's also just wondering, probability of seeing snow leopards on the trips. What is the percentage? Are we looking at 50%, 75%?
Well, for snow leopards,
Yeah, for snow leopards.
oh, 95.
Yeah,
95% is the success rate on the snow leopards.
yeah,
Um,
that is high.
yeah. Um, well, I think for the Rockjumper trips, I think it's actually 100%.
Yeah.
But from the people the people who've been running the trips over all of them, I think it's only ever been missed once or twice, and that was partly because they weren't even looking hard enough, or they weren't or they didn't spend quite long enough looking or something. But
Yeah,
that's why we allow enough time. That's why we have 5 days in that area. The
absolutely.
tours from next year are slightly different itinerary, but it's still got similar number of days looking for snow leopards and
Yeah,
Pallas's cat.
absolutely. Yeah, that are just dedicated. And as I say, yeah,
Yeah,
the chances are extremely high and have not
yeah,
been missed on a rock jumper
yeah,
trip.
yeah.
So yeah, the
Don't always
chances
see
seem snow
them.
leopard are very good.
Might not always be close enough for photographs or whatever, because
Right.
I think this year's tour had great views, but I don't think they got very good photos this year. But they saw it well and for a long period.
Yeah,
But mm,
absolutely. As you say, when you see them as well, you get to watch them for quite a while. And
oh
as I say, it
yes,
might be a
oh
bit of a
yes,
distance, but yeah, you can
yeah, yeah.
certainly
Oh
get to enjoy
yes,
them for
yes. You stay with them, and the
yeah,
scouts keep onto them, and if the animals are on the move, then you move as well. So yeah,
yeah, absolutely. And as you say, again, that's where those big wide open spaces make such a difference. You're not looking for them in the It's not like looking for a tiger in the jungles of India or a leopard along the thick riverine
they could still
forests.
be they can still be surprisingly hard to spot.
Sure, no, absolutely. Um, Michael's also just wondering as well. Just we're coming to the end of the questions, but thanks to everyone who's sticking around online. Actually, most people have stuck around online, so it's great. But Michael was just wondering as well: does government customs present any issues bringing scopes or long lenses into the country? Do they have any strange rules around that, or is it pretty straightforward?
Nope, nope. Straightforward.
Yeah.
Straightforward. It's a good question, and there are a number of countries that are, and it seems to be growing. There are a number of countries that are becoming a bit funny about optics, bringing optics into the country. But no, Mongolia is not one of them. And in my experience, the countries that presents difficulties, not insurmountable difficulties, but difficulties in taking scopes and stuff into them is Ethiopia, Eritrea, which no one goes to, Egypt, and Algeria, which no one goes to. Um, I don't think I can't think of anywhere else where there are problems bringing optics in.
No, no, absolutely not. And in Ethiopia, we make all the arrangements for everyone to get in. Just a matter
Yeah,
of serial numbers, and we sort that out for
yeah.
you. But
All you need to do with Ethiopia is just provide serial numbers in
yeah,
advance, and then it's all sorted. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Just a couple more questions that have come through here. Using thermal scopes, any issue on that front?
No issue in bringing them in, but I'm not sure that they'll be how useful they would be. But not an issue bringing one in. I I've got one, but think I don't think I've taken one to Mongolia because I've only got mine relatively recently.
Yeah, fair enough. And then how cold can it get? What are the coldest temperatures? I assume up in the mountains it'll be cooler, but
Yes.
what sort of temps
It's
are we looking at?
no, it's summer. So in the
Yeah.
lower areas, it's quite warm. Daytime temperatures are lovely. Around Ulaanbaatar, which is 1,300 meters, it can be positively quite hot, really. But it can be windy, and wind, of course, can be cooler. Up in the mountains, you'll definitely need a fleece and a jacket. At 3,000 meters, looking for snow leopards. Especially on one of the trips, we got the call at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the snow leopards have been found, and I had to go and wake everybody up in the Gers. I said, "Snow leopards have been found. We're leaving in 10 minutes." On everybody's door, and everyone was ready.
I'm
They
sure.
all made it. But you need, and then the staff put all the breakfast and lunch things into the cars for us, and we spent the whole day up and had our meals up in the mountains. But in those early mornings, you will need a fleece and a jacket, and even a hat and gloves as well, because you're at 10,000 feet in the early morning. It'll be You'll be taking layers off later, but yeah.
But no, that answers that perfectly. Thanks, Nigel. Um, and what's access to electricity and Wi-Fi generally like? Because you're saying
Oh,
it's not required, but just nice to know in advance, you know what to
yeah,
expect.
pretty good. Electricity,
Okay.
fine. Even in the Gur camp in the Altai, which is that's by far the simplest place, that's fine. Yeah, electricity, yes. Even in the individual Gurs, we all had electric points. Yep, yep. So
Oh,
you could
fantastic.
do all your charging inside your own Gurs.
Yeah,
Um,
that's excellent.
Even in the Altai, we could do that. There might have been one place somewhere else where we could only do the charging in the dining room. So you had to take your things to be charged up in the dining room. Can't remember, but I think so. And Wi-Fi generally okay. I think it might have been patchy in I think yes it was. It was patchy in the Altai area. It didn't work
Okay.
all the time. I don't think it was very good in actually in our camp. But when we
Mm.
went down to the petrol station area, in the small village, it was
Mm.
much better.
Excellent.
So yeah.
That's great. And then a different question here, but Versal says, Nice talk, Nigel. Thank you. Um, would you have any insights on any archival repository on falconry in Mongolia by any chance? That's a bit of
On on
an out there.
falconry,
Yeah, yeah.
no, I don't.
Mm,
We don't go and see it on our tours. I'm not sure if it's quite the right time of year, but it's a little bit out of our way.
right.
It's the area where they do the most of the falconry is up in the northwest, and it's a bit further from where we go to.
Mm,
But we don't bring it in as part of our itinerary. Uh, I don't really personally want to see an eagle catch sort of marmots or whatever it catches. I don't know. I don't really want to see that actually, personally,
mm.
but some people
Um,
do.
and then similarly, would you know if the country has any bird specimen collections that one can visit a museum for? Okay.
Well, in Mongolia,
Yeah, in Mongolia.
well, Ulaanbaatar's got a museum, of course, and Gombo, who's the author of two of those field guides,
Hmm.
he's the top ornithologist there, and he is attached to that museum.
Okay.
And he was actually staying at the same camp as us in 2023. He does a bit of guiding as well. So
Okay.
yeah, there's a museum in Ulaanbaatar, but I've never been to it.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Nigel. And then the final question that we're going to take here from Lisa is just asking about the wide range of months. So there's quite a wide range of months when looking at the number of departures between the
Wide
snow
range of
leopard
what?
and the birding tour. A wide range of months that are being offered
Oh, months.
for the
Sorry, yes.
various tours. Yeah, and she was just wondering about why that's the case between the snow
Well,
leopard and the birding tour.
But although the snow leopards are going to be there all year round,
Mm,
um, we are reliably informed by the guys who run the snow leopard camp in the Altai that they only really are available from July, August, September really are the best months for seeing snow leopard. They must be there all the time. Um, I obviously in the winter it would be too cold and too difficult.
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know why June wouldn't be just as good, but we tend to go July and August because that's supposed to be the best time for the snow leopard. But if you want to see the full range of Mongolian birds, then you're probably better off going in May or June. But as yet, we don't see snow leopard on that trip.
But as you say,
So
yes, that whole range from sort of
yeah,
May to September is good in Mongolia in general.
yes,
As you say,
yes,
those
it's
things.
good. There's always something going on. May, June, you've got migrants heading north. You've got breeding birds, and in July, August, you've got still got breeding birds, and you've got migrants heading south. So yeah, so there's always something to see. That's the
Absolutely.
window anyway. Between May and August or September is very much the time to go to Mongolia. You wouldn't want to go later than that, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Nigel, I think that brings us to the end. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful presentation, really fantastic little virtual tour there through Mongolia, really fantastic overview. And everyone, well, we had a lot of great comments. I think folks really enjoyed that. And otherwise, just from my side as well, thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. It's been great having you. And until next time, happy birding and goodbye.